4 o'clock, so we can go ahead and get started. We'll go ahead and get started. It's 4 o'clock, and thank you for attending today's town hall meeting. The focus and attention of today's meeting is on the fiscal year 2019 budget plan. And I want to tell you a little bit about the process that we go through to get to this point. This process actually starts a few months ago with the management team as they work from the bottom up. We have a zero-based budget. We take into account all the actual data from prior years, but it's quite an exhaustive process, as these individuals would attest to. In fact, we actually go through about over 3,000 lines of detail that go into this budget plan. After they go through their budget plan, and myself and Stephanie as a controller go back and forth on various expenses, it eventually gets in a draft format to the finance committee. They have the budget for about a week, and then we have a workshop with the finance committee. It's a full day, about 6 or 7 hours, where we go through every line item of the budget with the department heads presenting their respective areas of the budget. Then it goes on to the board. They have the budget for about a week, and then we have a budget workshop with the board of directors, and that's about a half-day workshop, 3 or 4 hours, where we again go through every line item and all the detail. That gets us to this point today, where we have the member budget presentation, and the step after that is the board approving the budget on August 24th. They'll approve the budget plan, both the operational and capital budget plan. So myself and the management team, we were talking about how we wanted to make today's presentation, and we wanted to really make it more relatable to you as a member. We're not going to sit here and go through 3,000 lines of budgets. How does it impact you as a member? And that's why it says up on the screen, it's all about the experience, because we wanted to have a different presentation today where some of the department heads that are here are going to go through their respective areas and talk about what they're planning in their budget and how that's going to impact you. And of course, we'll end the presentation with the budget information, which is what you're all here for. And we have a handout that we'll give out at the end of the meeting with some of that information as well. So for those that don't know, I'll introduce the department managers that are here. Starting on the end there is Stephanie Olaf, she's our controller. Mark Metzger, our director of grounds. Just dragged him right off the golf course, as you can see. Eric Peterson, our head pro, and Ben Elwell is our clubhouse manager. So they're each going to talk about their respective areas and some of the things that you can expect for the coming year. In addition to thanking the team, I want to thank the finance committee and the board, because as I said, this is a pretty exhaustive process. It's every line item is scrutinized, and the finance committee and the board of directors really spend a lot of time on it, and I want to thank them for that as well. So let's get right into it then. So we built the budget to accomplish the vision, the mission, and the core values. We also built the budget so that it's aligned with our strategic plan. And that's important to note, because as you look at our vision and mission statement, these tie very nicely into not only planning a budget, but how the budget is executed. That also flows into the governance model and reflective of our core values, respect, mutual respect among members and staff, the reputation, and enhancing and protecting the reputation of the club. Obviously, there's a monetary side to that as well. Maintaining property values in a stable community, financially stable community. And it's interesting, I just read an article. Go to mic 2. All right, I'm ready for that. All right, am I back on?
Yes.
All right. I just read an article recently that talks about that point about maintaining property values, and actually in a gated golf country club community, the homes within the gates are actually impacted from 20 to 40% of their home value is increased compared to local real estate outside of the gates. And we're actually doing a good amount of comparison right now to cross-check that data against communities directly near Stonebridge outside of our gates. So you'll see more on that in the future. Excellence, providing superb facilities, and that's one that the budget obviously needs to be aligned with. And communication, proper transparency, and that's why we're here today, to talk about the budget, and we have it on video so that we can post it online as well. So how do we measure success? This is a $9 million business, and in any business you measure success with your return on investment, right? And here it's a little bit different because your return on investment is member satisfaction. It's the member experience. So with that in mind, we have to have tools to be able to track the member satisfaction. And one of the things that we started a little over a year ago was a membership satisfaction questionnaire. We're sending that out every quarter to 20% of the members. So every 15 months, you can expect to get a survey in the mail. Both husband and wife should receive it. And I'm not expecting that you can read all this data. In fact, it's all on the website, the Stonebridge website. Just go to the board and committee section and then the strategic planning committee webpage, and you'll see all the latest information. But what this tells us, we can track over time how we're doing. In some cases, it's a small sampling, and it may not be fully reflective of the whole membership, obviously, because it's only 20% of the membership each quarter. But collectively, over time, we can definitely see trends. For example, grill room, we know that there's some things we need to think about and work with in the grill room, and Ben's going to talk a little bit about that today and how this budget impacts that. And that's not to say that if something is rating 90% or better, which is one of our goals, that we just rest on our laurels and that's it. Eric and Mark are going to talk about some things that they're doing to improve and enhance their areas, even though they rate pretty well in the member status. Their areas of responsibility rate pretty well in their areas of respective areas. In addition to the membership satisfaction questionnaire, we also do a professional survey every 3 years. 2019 is when we're due to have that done again, and it's in the budget for this coming year. As well as comment cards, member feedback. We have an online suggestion box. So we're collecting feedback in a number of ways, but the MSQ is a great way to capture all the different amenities and departments. So how do we improve those scores? Well, we need to reinvest in the team and the culture of the club. When we talk about the culture, not just of the members, but the team culture, the employee culture. And that's something that I've really been striving to work towards over the last couple of years. And one of the things that the board approved as part of a change about 1.5 years ago was this compensation philosophy. And what that says is essentially just to be competitive with the local market, to pay at or above for respective positions. And we have great data that we get from Club Managers Association. There's various reports. So we can find out for any given position at the club what the going rate is, what the high, the low, the average is for any position at the club. So we have great data in that way. And not only when it comes to the employees, we also have a ton of information that we gather for everything. And Mark, Eric, Stephanie, Ben, they all know we have data that can compare the price of a BLT at lunch or a filet mignon at dinner, total cost of ownership and dues, cost per hole in golf maintenance, cost per acre. For Eric, cart fees, green fees. We have all this information at our fingertips, and we use that as we build this budget plan. So we make sure that we're remaining within that average. And to talk about total cost of ownership, there was a meeting, I think it was our last town hall meeting, and there was a statement made that Stonebridge is the highest bundled cost of ownership in any bundled club, and that is just simply not accurate. In fact, we typically compare ourselves with 8 other bundled clubs. The strategic planning committee right now is actually working to update that list, but currently that list of comparable clubs includes Forest Glen, Spring Run, Copperleaf, Pelican Sound, Vasari, Worthington, Naples Lakes, and Vanderbilt. And Stephanie actually reached out to all of those controllers and took their total cost of ownership. So just like us, if there's an F&B minimum, a service charge, whatever components go into it, total cost to live there. And Stonebridge is right exactly in the middle of those other 8 clubs. And we're working on gathering some more data, as well as the strategic planning committee updating that list of comparable clubs. But you should know that we're right in the middle of all those comparable clubs for total cost of ownership. One other thing I'd like to mention when we talk about the team and how important that is, and reinvesting in that, is one thing that I'm very proud of, and that's the fact that we have currently a 7% turnover rate for our employees. And the industry average for clubs in Florida is 29%. So it gives you an idea of where we are, which I think is remarkable. So as I said before, we're going to have the department managers come up, talk about their respective areas. So we're going to start that with Anelwa.
Tim, and good afternoon, everybody. Today I want to talk a little bit about how we plan to enhance the Clubhouse member experience in the coming fiscal year. And as Tim alluded to previously, I also believe that Stonebridge's most precious asset is the employees which provide these member services, both out front and behind the scenes of the operation. To maintain and enhance this experience, we must continue to invest in human capital to keep Stonebridge as an employer of choice. With that in mind, our goal is to increase the quality, consistency, and accessibility of all the club's dining programs. Critical in achieving this goal is the continuation and slight expansion of the seasonal employee program via the H-2B visa. This budget proposes raising that total number of employees from 17 to 20 seasonal full-time staff within that program. This will not only allow for proper coverage during peak times. I think most everybody here can relate to coming to dinner at the club on a Friday in February, regardless of venue, and being a little frustrated with timing of service. But in addition to that, we'll also be able to reduce overtime hours, which will not only help the bottom line, but also increase productivity and decrease employee burnout. I believe this will be a win-win-win for employees, management, and the members. So if you could read the cells in Tim's member satisfaction questionnaire slide, which I'm sure you couldn't, you would see that though overall F&B scores are climbing, we're still falling short of our goal in the grill room venue. And a lot of work is being done by the house committee this summer in collaborating on concepts on how to rebrand the grill room and try to bring it back to what the membership expected pre-renovation for the upcoming year. And this, but in regards to the budget, this includes reallocating a portion of the entertainment budget to bring some live entertainment upstairs on Saturday nights instead of having it in the bistro. And we're also looking at providing a streamlined menu that can be revised with even more frequency with a stronger focus on small plates and consistent, healthier options. As far as accessibility is concerned, I'm referencing the demand for expanded pizza oven hours of operation. That was a very successful program over the past season, and you can expect to see the pizza kitchen open at 4 p.m. daily from January through April during those peak season months. This will obviously require some additional labor, and that's represented in the budget numbers as well. Also, maybe not a budgetary point, but we're excited to note that bistro patrons will not be limited to just a selection of composed pizzas on a menu. We're going to have a full list of ingredients where you can build your own custom pizza, which is something that we've received a lot of requests for. And just one more quick note that's not included that's not in these budget numbers is any significant increases in user fees, i.e. Menu prices or drink prices in the a la carte venues or the events. Last fiscal year, we adjusted event prices down roughly 20% across the board, and we spaced out the timing of the large events on the calendar as best we could. And that paid off in increased attendance at pretty much all the events, and which adds to the memorability of those experiences. So, Eric's going to talk a little bit about golf. That's all I have. Thank you, folks.
Hello, everyone. So the theme of my budget this year is going to be really to improve the member experience on the driving range. Some of the things we're going to be doing on the driving range this year is going to be adding some more signage up there. We're going to be adding some more distance finders. We're going to have some short range targets. I know we get up there, we can't have a shot that goes 50 yards, 40 yards. So we're going to have some targets that you could shoot for, some shorter range targets. I also would like to get more coverage up at the driving range. I know we have trouble late in the day. The ranger goes home, so this year we're going to have the ranger here later. We're going to have a ranger and a starter up there for the late tee times, between the 4 and 5 o'clock tee times. Well, this is usually between January through March. It gets a little crazy up there, so we're going to have more coverage up there. We're going to have the range attendant and a starter up there and a ranger for the late tee times for everybody. The other thing I'd like to do this year is to try to improve our teaching. We're going to improve our teaching by adding some teaching aids up on the range, some alignment sticks, some video equipment, and also we're going to try to get some classes with Jeff and Sally on golf and fitness. They're each going to get certified in this. It's called TPI, which is Titleist Performance Institute. So Sally and Jeff are going to be taking these classes, and they're going to be able to work golf and fitness into like one class, so it's gonna be pretty neat. The other thing we have coming up is, you might have already seen that we're on the GIN now. We had to go on GIN to be in accordance with USGA, but the good thing about GIN is we're gonna have some different scorecards. We're also gonna have the capability of do live scoring. So when the ladies and the men, and ladies' day and men's day, you're in the bistro having lunch after, you'll be able to see on the TV the scores coming in, to see how you're doing. So that's a nice little feature, live scoring. Sally and Phil will be playing with that this year, so you'll be seeing that coming in. We also have a Chelsea app. I know you're trying to make tea times. You're gonna be able to make the tea time with an app on your phone now. Just put in, review a tea time, make a tea time. It's really simple. We're gonna have something that in the newsletter to teach you how to log into that. And we're also continuing to do our sales, and Lisa's gonna keep bringing in our new lines for the merchandise. Okay? Thank you. Mark?
Oh, hey, that's me. I literally did just come off the golf course. A couple different golf courses today. And I'm with him. I'm not gonna really talk about our operational part of the budget, because for my department, it doesn't change all that much. I'm not adding labor or doing anything. We have a good, solid team in place, and the club and the members give us ample resources to do our job. So I want to kind of focus on some of our capital projects that are going on. Fiscal 19 will bring up the second of 3 years of this landscape beautification project. A couple years ago, I got with Tim and explained to him why aren't we reserving for landscape like we reserve for our other assets. So we kind of got this project put in place where we have a certain sum of money for the next 2 more years. We started last year. You can see some of that around the putting green that we did. We'll be working on the single-family home cul-de-sacs and the corners out front, the entrance to the side streets. But we'll just kind of go around the property and start removing and replacing the dilapidated plants that are out there. And there's a lot of plants. The other thing that we're doing, and it's not actually on this capital reserve budget right now, is we're working with a landscape architect to redesign the front entrance. There'll be some enhancements to the sign, whether it be backlit letters or rebranding basically the outside, the curb appeal of Stonebridge. Obviously, I have grand ideas about everything in here, but we'll go one step at a time. But the fountain out there needs to be replaced. The fact that we lost that big oak tree in the middle island there is a blessing and a curse. It was a beautiful tree, but it also opened up and gave us some opportunity to redesign the entrance a little bit better. So I think hopefully that work will get done next summer, and it's going to be very impactful. And then the other thing that's in our capital reserve budget is the golf course future planning. We're going to be contracting with a golf course architect, Kip Schultex. He's done a lot of renovations in this area. He's a great architect. The good thing about him is he thinks outside the box, and I think that's what our club needs. And not that we're planning anytime soon to do a full golf course renovation, but we need a plan in place. So if we have any issues before any major work comes up, then we can fix them and repair them in the fashion of what we want our golf course to be. But that's, I think, having that plan in place and having a goal of where we want the golf course to go is going to help with the stability of our whole community. And that's kind of all I got.
That's good.
And I'll run out of here before questions.
Have fun with it, man.
All right, thank you very much. Apparently I'm the shortest of the group.
And I didn't have any notes.
You did not have any notes. So what Mark mentioned ties in nicely to the next slide, which is the master capital budget. And I'll explain a little bit about the funding sources, because we do have a couple of different buckets for master capital projects. For the master capital, this is funded through the annual master reserve assessment. This is the assessment that you have every year. This year is planned at $1,060. That funds the existing, the replacement and replacement of the existing assets. You can see At the top of the list here, these are all existing lease packages. Totals about $300,000 a year. And the rest of the list are items that are due for replacement this year. You can see the security vehicle being replaced. Mark mentioned about landscape beautification, year 2 of 3, that's in the plan. Mark also mentioned the golf course architect for future planning. And then there's some other assets that are being replaced this coming year. The other funding source is through the resale fund, and as I'm sure you all know, that was recently amended just a couple of months ago, and that is funded through purchase new home buyers within the community. It equals 50% of the dues and master base assessment. For those that move internally that are already owners, it's 10%. Previously it was 25%. So that funds these projects, and some of these may not be very exciting. We're adding some storage in the cart barn. Jason actually needs more bag storage, which is a great thing. In the tennis area, we have a ball machine that's being added. That's one that's actually been recommended by the Tennis and Fitness Committee. Peloton bike, you may have seen that on some commercials. They have a commercial version of that. That's something we want to introduce to our fitness program here. And I would like to note too that in addition to the funding source for this, the way that these projects are approved, as I mentioned, the ball machine, that came up through a committee recommendation. Typically, it's through a board recommendation and it's part of the budget plan, just like you see today. There are times where something comes up during the course of the year, and if it wasn't approved as part of the budget plan that the board approves later this month, then management brings it to the board and they approve it by resolution. So everything that you see here or on the master capital list is approved by the board of directors. I want to turn it over to Stephanie to talk about some of the specific line items.
Okay, we're getting closer to that elephant in the room. I know you're all wondering, how is this going to impact my dues? How much is it going to cost for all these enhancements that the department heads have been talking about? So Tim mentioned that the budget process is very extensive. And early on in that process, we tasked our department heads with reviewing all of the service agreements that they had in place, reaching out to competitors to find out if we're still getting the best value for our dollar, and keeping our vendors honest. They also wanted to ensure that decisions they were making were in line with our vision, mission, and values, as Tim mentioned at the beginning. Some of the agreements or policies that you're going to see some of the most significant changes in our fiscal year budget is Comcast. That agreement runs through December of 2020, and they have the ability to give us an annual increase of up to 4% annually. This agreement will be reviewed by the Communication and Information Technologies Committee as it gets closer to the termination of that agreement to determine if it's still a best fit for Stonebridge. The next contract or agreement is our janitorial agreement. This remained flat over the last few years, and we've deemed that it's still a good fit for Stonebridge, so we'll continue with the same vendor at a flat cost. Valet, we switched to a new vendor this year, and you'll see a decrease of about 20% over the course of next year. Another vendor that was switched recently was our coffee and tea vendor, and we will see a decrease or savings of 15% over the course of the year. Security, I'm going to just turn that one over to Tim just to discuss that a little further.
Sure. Security is one that we really took a hard look at. That's a substantial cost within our budget plan. That falls under the master base assessment or the common area budget, and it is a pretty significant number. We're actually going to be taking a good portion of that in-house. Currently, we outsource all of the staffing at the gatehouse and the road and patrol. We're going to be taking about 75% of those hours in-house and continue to outsource about 25%. So what that'll allow us to do is bring that core team, Kathleen, Catherine, Fred, all of the individuals that have been here, most of them over 10 years, and reward their loyalty and actually have them become a team member of the association versus outsource. Again, we'll still outsource about 25%. That actually will reduce expense quite a bit. That 12% reduction with this hybrid approach is going to save the association over $40,000. I'll turn it back over to Stephanie.
Another large line item in the budget is our insurance line item. And Mr. Morrissey has been just instrumental in the working committee on the insurance, and we've made great strides over the last few years. We continued with our same carrier. The policy renewed July 1st. We continued with the same carrier, same coverage. Our insured values increased over about 5%. And we also received, it's important to note, $650,000 claim payout on Hurricane Irma last year. Taking all of that into account, we're seeing a 10% increase on that policy effective July 1st. And the last big line item in the budget, health insurance. So this is an area that impacts our employees directly. Making changes to carriers, it's a big deal to our employees. And our current carrier came back with a 7% increase. We did have a competitor bid that came in significantly less. And our agent was able to negotiate the same coverage, same carrier, flat premium. That's significant. A lot of our competitor clubs are seeing double digits in insurance increase over this past year. So we're very pleased with that. While building the budget, the team also reviewed user fees, and they also looked at other ways to increase efficiencies. So this year we've included a 5% increase in our non-resident dues. This is going to be your social members and your tennis memberships. We also included an increase in greens fees. So this is not cart fees, this is going to be greens fees, and this is $1 for 18 holes and 50 cents for 9. The last time we saw an increase in greens fees was 3 years ago. As Erica mentioned earlier, we're moving to gin for handicap scoring. That fee will be going up to $25 for the annual year. Transfer fees is another item that is increasing this fiscal year to $450. This is for all renters as well as resales within the community. And the last item, I'm going to turn to Tim just for a little bit further clarification.
So the tennis court watering system, currently the tennis courts are actually watered, as you may know, they're hard-true courts, are watered from underground, and that's actually, we utilize county water for that, which is rather expensive. Last year, we switched out the common area pump station. It was an original pump station going back to the developer days. It was in the reserves. We were finally able to replace it, which Mark was pretty excited about. And Mark was able to incorporate I'll call it a filtration system with enzymes and so forth, that actually produces a better quality water that's coming out through the common area. And the great news is that now allows us to use that water to water the tennis courts. So instead of paying for county water, we're actually going to be using the water that we pump up through the aquifer. So that equates to about a $27,000 savings that we're projecting in the coming fiscal year. We still have the ability to manually switch over to county water, which is important in case there's a main break or something happens, because if the courts don't get water, they dry out and it's dangerous. So we still have that as a fail-safe if there's an issue with the common area water.
Okay. The long-awaited dues amount listed here. So I want to draw your attention to the fourth line down. That's going to be your total operational costs. And why that's important is that all of those 3 line items above are components of your operational dues. We break it out like that. That's how it's billed on your statements per the declaration or the governing docs. But those components consist of your club dues, your master base assessment, and what's included in that piece is going to be your common areas maintenance. That's going to be your gate access and roving patrol, as well as cable is all built into that line item. And the last component of your operational cost is the food and beverage service charge. Looking at all 3 of those, it's going to be a 4% increase over last year, or $264. As Tim mentioned earlier, your master capital reserve assessment is going up $30 from last year. That'll take it to $1,060. And the last item unchanged is the renovation dues. That will continue through February of 2023. And if you take that all into account, the total cost of ownership that we're proposing for fiscal year 19 will be going up 3.5% in total, or $294 from the previous year. I'm going to turn it over to Tim just to discuss that last column. He's going to talk about how it compares to historical information.
So that the far right column is something we added this year because we wanted to show historically how does this stack up. So you can see when we look at that operational component that Stephanie mentioned, our average since 2009 is 2.7%, and total cost of ownership, including capital, is averaging 2.5% since 2009. And I think what's important in pointing out is how different the operation was back in 2009. Even when you think about the size of the clubhouse, under air, the clubhouse is now almost 60% larger. So obviously there's an increase in utilities, water, electric, and so forth, and certainly an increase in staffing when it comes to food and beverage. In 2009, we essentially had one kitchen, one dining operation, and now we're running 2 operations many times at the same time. So there is additional staffing there in a department that runs at a subsidy. In addition to that, we also have the fitness program. In 2009, we literally had just a converted sales center, and it felt and looked like a converted sales center. Now, I would hope to say that it's truly part of the amenity package. We now have an employee on staff for that area with Jeff, and we have just an amazing variety of not only equipment but classes. In 2009, we probably had 5 classes per week. Now we're up to about 25 in peak season, and running more like 5 in the summer months. So there's quite a bit that's taken place since 2009. So when we look at the fact that it averages 2.5%, I think that sends a good message. I hope it does. So we'll look at a pie chart here that breaks down your dues dollar, basically is what it does. So you see your dues per member, $7,854, and then it'll give you a breakdown as a percentage by the different departments. And this will all be on the website as well. So you can see like the common area maintenance that Stephanie was talking about with the cable TV and the gate access. That makes up about 19% or 19 cents on the dollar for your dues dollar. Golf is net of revenues, so that takes into account golf maintenance, golf operations, and that subsidy at 18%. Food and beverage is about 11%, 11 cents on the dollar for your dues dollar. There's a service charge as well. That's a different component at about 7%. And the good thing about one thing I want to point out about the F&B service charge is that you have some return on that as well. Obviously, when you come in and dine, you're not paying the gratuity at point of sale, so you do have some, call it return on that investment in your dues dollar. So this gives you a nice breakdown of each of the different areas and where your dues dollar goes. As I mentioned before, we'll have a handout when you leave, but before we get there, we'll take questions. There's a mic up front for anyone. Use the mic, that'd be great. We are videoing it, so the mic will help. Is that mic on?
Very good, such a reputation. So my first question is to Mark regarding the architectural plans for the entrance. Are we talking about both entrances?
Yes.
Or are we, yes,
Yeah, there'll be enhancements to both entrances. Obviously, the Immokalee entrance will get probably a little bit more because,
Well, it's
notice
big.
it more because it has a fountain
right,
and whatnot. But both entrances will, and actually the entrance to the clubhouse will get enhanced as well.
okay, thank you. Eric, now this is a joke coming from me because I don't play golf, but I have lots of opinions. Now, I went to play golf, and I have to tell you that the joke of the day was that I said if anybody left me outside of the cart, I wouldn't be found for 5 days, because I had absolutely no idea where I was when I was out there. So I actually want to suggest that we have I've seen it on other scorecards.
It's on there.
I'm sorry?
It's on the scorecard.
It is a map?
Yes.
I'm not on my scorecard. Okay.
But if you played in a tournament,
Somebody's got to keep me in check
it's a
here.
standard
Right, if you
scorecard.
played it's on our regular standard scorecard. It's
If you
not-
played in a tournament, you wouldn't see it on a tournament
I
card.
played in one of the Sunday Murphy things.
Yeah, you're in trouble.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been on that.
Oh, that, I feel much better about that. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, there's a regular scorecard on the card though, even though that other one's on there and it has a map on it.
Okay, I'll have to pay better. As I learn to play, I'll pay more attention to it. All right, this is another question that we had, and you, actually, Tim, this is for you.
Sure.
I know everybody is all wound up about the potential for major changes. Is there a line on this budget that relates to the potential future bistro expansion?
No, there's not.
That's a whole different ballgame,
There's
yes?
nothing in this budget plan.
So this has absolutely nothing to do financially with any additional, with any change in the
Correct.
finances?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Sure. We do have happy hour at the bar until 6, so the bar is open. Any other questions before we wrap up?
We're gonna get copies.
Yes.
Okay.
Ben's at the door and he has copies right there for you. If you have any questions when you get it or when you look online, just give me a ring. Thank you for coming. Oh, Mrs. Irwin.
I just wanted to thank, from all of us, to the department here heads and to you for the job well done.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.